And today, we have a very important and pertinent topic which we are going to be tackling, which is about how to break into impact consulting. Impact consulting is a very niche and very sort of new area. It's a very upcoming area, and it's an area which in our conversations with a lot of people, we felt that it's an area which many people are interested to get in, but there is dearth of guidance, or there is very few or no guidance available in terms of how people should get into impact consulting. So that's the topic for us today: how to break into impact consulting. Okay, with that, I hand over to Anamitra. And Anamitra, over to you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Akshat. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining in. My name is Anamitra, and super excited to speak to so many of you all at once. Especially on a Saturday evening when you could have done something better, you choose to spend time with us here. So definitely the onus is on us now to ensure that you get some value out of the time that you'll spend here. So thanks a lot. With that, tiny bit about me. So I did my undergrad from Indian School of Mines, IIT Dhanbad. I graduated back in 2016, and that's when during my last year when I decided that I want to pursue the UPSC Civil Services examination. So I took a gap of around 6 months. I then started working as an executive engineer in ONGC. Technically, I did not get a placement even though I was from an IIT. I did everything right, and still things didn't work out for me. And yeah, the stimulation of working in a very, I would say, on ground, practical, operations heavy role in the Northeast India sort of pushed me towards the UPSC journey. I prepared for UPSC for around 3 years, and back in 2020, around end of 2020, I decided I want to maneuver, try the corporate career out, see what it takes. And MBA came to be a proper bridge between the gaps that I had in terms of the skills that I needed to break into the corporate career. That's why I went for my MBA from the Indian School of Business. I graduated from ISB in 2022, and then I joined BCG, Boston Consulting Group. I joined as a senior associate. I again spent around 2.5 years there, worked across more than 6 sectors, different sorts of challenges, problems that I have faced during the stint that I was there as a generalist consultant. I got promoted to a consultant one in my first year and a consultant two in my second year. However, once I was in my second year, or I completed my second year in BCG, is when I decided I want to refocus on my passion in social impact. And while I did get some opportunities in BCG, wanted to work into a dedicated impact organization while also taking away the skills that I built in consulting. So obvious choice was to break into impact consulting, and that's when FSG happened. Very recently, joined FSG, and right now I'm also mentoring students on Rebounce. Absolutely looking forward to meet so many bright minds, and whatever things I have learned. Name it a failure, name it a success, but things that I have tried and tested will be good for me to give back to the community to see that you don't have to spend so much time or try out different stuff. I think it's all about information symmetry. So if we can bridge whatever gaps are there in information through these webinars, I think that'll be helpful for you guys. And I'll definitely require some validation in the end. Yeah. So yeah, thanks. That's about me. A small quote on what social impact consulting means. So impact consulting basically it emerges out of the branch and the roots of management consulting, where you are utilizing a structured approach to solving problems, and then your strategic bend of mind to address both economical but absolutely important social challenges that exist in the community. So that's majorly what impact consulting focuses on. If I had to explain to a 7-year-old kid, I would say that like for a 7-year-old kid, if an uncle who comes to the kid and tells that what you should not eat chocolates, while your parents are telling you I work in this chocolate company, and it's going to hamper your health, so you should not eat, which sort of convinces the child a lot, right? So basically that's what consulting is. You have a group of the smartest folks who have great analytical skills. They'll look into data, understand what is the data speaking about, and build hypothesis and knowledge. And they bring a outside in view to an industry. For people who are working in the industry for a long time, you would often think, right? Like for someone who has been working in 20 years in industry, how can a consultant who's working for just 1 year or 7 months bring in recommendations? Why can't the person do it? So it's basically about doing the right thing with the right set of resources, your systematic analysis, and then how you can put it in a plate and offer it to the client with the outside in view, with no bias, but only data and numbers doing the talk. That's majorly what consulting is. So if I now have to explain it in business terms, management consulting majorly starts with firstly identifying what's the root cause of the problem. That's a huge, like 50% of the solution is there in identifying what the problem is. A lot of people focus on symptoms and not the problem. So identification, then how can we do some data-driven decision making and analysis, you can call it. Then what could be the strategic recommendations for the analysis that you have made? Overall, how can you increase productivity, increase efficiency, and then for the organization also identify what the imminent risks will be and how you can help them mitigate those. That's majorly what management consulting as a whole offers to different industries around the world. Yeah. But then the next question comes is, okay, if this is the huge bucket of management consulting, where does social impact consulting come in? Or what is its specific offering? So majorly, while there are different kinds of problems, business problems there, a company might face losses. It might want to understand if it should enter a market on and stuff like that. Typical business problems. Social impact problems are usually ones which do not have a cookie cutter solution. Yeah. So what they do is basically there are many intertwined challenges, societal challenges, environmental governance, especially UPSC aspirants who have prepared, you would know, right? Like how all these challenges are connected to each other. So how can we offer solutions to problems for whom there are no structures given, no market solutions are there? You need to, get into every field is a green field there. So how can you make those solutions probable, as well as ensure that they are sustainable and scalable, so that, people can actually start moving in the direction of development? That's majorly what the kind of problems that impact consulting deals with. So when we say social impact, of course, the basic education, healthcare, poverty alleviation, agriculture, all of those comes into play. Governance, how can the administration or the decision making bodies improve their policy making? Once the policy has been strategized, the implementation of the same, monitoring, verification standards, all of that. Then the concept of sustainability comes in. So climate change, sustainable development, green energy or clean energy transition, that's also something which fits in because it has a societal value as well. And then of course, economic growth, but especially focusing on marginalized sections, like improving livelihoods, giving more impetus to MSMEs, rural development of tribals and different, sections of the society. All of that includes the type of problems. And going through the rest of the webinar, we'll discuss that more in details. So if I had to, understand what the differences are. So number one, impact is completely purpose driven. The aim is to improve the positive or drive positive impact in the world. That's the main motto. Then the stakeholder, it's varied, absolutely varied. You're not just working with corporates, you're working with philanthropies, multilaterals, social enterprises, CSRs, foundations, governments, any institution which might have a social effect on the society overall or globally. Then how do we determine success? We don't just look at profits or losses. We look at different social metrics, like increasing towards or moving towards sustainable development goals, your social return on investment for whatever endeavor you're taking, what are the community outcomes, how are they embedded into your regular KPIs, stuff like that. Then we look into financial sustainability. We don't want to give a solution which will give you good returns right now in the short term. You want to make it long term, long sustaining. Then how can we also not stay distant from the ground? How can we connect to the roots with whatever solutions or suggestions we are giving? So what are the on ground level of implementation? How can we co-create and build a solution which can take everyone together and improve their overall lives of being? And then of course multidisciplinary problem solving. So you take insights from public policy, there are economical data, there will be sociological, behavioral studies, put all of them into place, and then you try to find out what could be the imminent root causes and the resultant solutions of the same. That's overall kind of the trajectory with respect to the project management and impact consulting. So if I had to discuss the work landscape, the different types of clients, if I may call it, that you work with. So the first category will be basically your donors and regular investors who are looking into development impactful projects. So maybe fund allocation, so identifying which sectors have the highest potential for impact and returns, which are the right NGOs and non-profits, and then what are the specific deals and objectives that would go along, and then some sorts of sustainable investment business or overall investment modeling. What are the alternate different models like sustainable development bonds, and all of those come into play. Even the foundation strategy, you might get to work in developing the strategy. Like for example, if a US based philanthropic fund wants to enter a South Asian country in its climate change focus, that's a foundation strategy. Then any sort of actionable framework building, or reorganization, developing any new measurable metrics to understand progress for the foundation. All of these include these kinds of roles. Then specifically for non-profits or non-governmental organizations, so how can we sort of refine their funding strategy, understanding which are the different pockets that your funds should go in, the how should the flow of funds be completely non-interruptible, or less dependent on externalities. What is the different implementation plan you should change, or benefit basis different contextual factors. Then how can we grow and scale them? What would be the roadmap that would be built, which again is usually linked to some sort of international, national, social targets. And then overall capacity building. How can we make the organization more effective? Service portfolio assessment. What are the different operating models which will result in the best, again, impact for the organization? Then when we specifically talk about government, of course, government's priorities are a bit different. So designing a program, again, implementation focus, maybe through pilot models, some feasibility studies, tailoring the requirements basis the different regional intricacies or different landscapes that come into play. And how can we identify and secure relevant, say, funding opportunities for these particular projects? Then when a project has already started, so how can smoothen its project management, implementation focus, or some elements of process optimization, like needed be technical reforms, societal reforms, administrative reforms, all of those. And then how can we put different participatory players, which are the stakeholders, and ensure proper coordination and collaboration on ground. And finally, when these are on, like already in place, have effectively been implemented, how can we ensure they are moving in the right direction? So developing the right MMRV, monitoring results verification standards, collecting the right data, choosing the right stakeholders for collecting the data, analyzing the same, having the proper visualization of the data to understand what its scope is in the final results. And then what could be the the insights in case you need to change course, or if there's a necessity for a course correction, how can we do make that happen to ultimately reach the end stage. So those are the type of different projects that you work in. When I talk about the major players, the firms that you will join in if you want to work in impact consulting. So the first group is impact focused consulting groups, which work at a global level. So the Dalberg, Britspan, and FSGs of the world come into play. And again, while largely they might look very similar, but they have some nuanced differences between them. So, for example, Dalberg highly focuses on international development, on policy, building, and it works with either governments directly or a lot of governmental organizations. Versus Britspan, it's spread out majorly, focuses on foundations, NGOs, and a lot of high net worth donors who are specifically looking for funding certain strategy oriented projects. They could be working either for healthcare focus, they could have a focus on education or something, but they try to find who are these high net worth donors, and how could their flow of funds be absolutely channelized to give the societal returns that they're looking for. Then FSG, where I'm working, they work with different corporations, less with government, more with corporations, foundations, nonprofits. Their focus is on driving collective impact. They look at scalable solutions, and if I can call it strategic philanthropy, how can philanthropy be called strategic is something they help establish these program roadmaps for all the organizations, other three kinds of organizations I mentioned. Then there are a few specialist social impact consulting firms. So many of you might already know Samagra. Samagra is a leader in fact in working in governance projects. It works in tandem with many state governments here in the country. Satwa has a good foothold with CSR organizations and their associate measurements. Then there are many other impact players. You can always take some time out to read about them, like GDI Partners, Nudge Foundation, Dasra, Chase India, Athena, and all of those. They are into impact consulting. All of them have some sort of, I would say, USP that they offer to their clients, all of them operating in India. And then for there are these big consulting firms which have their social impact wings as well. So they are not, these firms are not specialized in social impact. Social impact is one of the very one of the many arms of consulting that they have. So for the big four, they would have their arms of consulting, like a Deloitte social impact consulting will be there. BCG has its own social impact practice. McKinsey has its public social sector consulting practice, and all of that. So all the big four have it in place. And then again, they have all of them have been working in different such projects. Like BCG has been working very closely with Niti Aayog for the 2047 projects that the government has sort of declared some time back. So these companies, they are spread out across the different domains of social impact, which means that we also have a lot of opportunities laying out there. And if I had to talk about, and this is when it starts getting a bit specific to understanding what you need, and also trying to figure out, maybe there's an opportunity for you to figure out where do you stand versus what's needed. And this is where I would definitely request your focus on. So there are a few hard skills, which are usually helpful to have. I won't say you would need it during the interview. You don't need it exactly during the interview to convert these roles, but these are good to have, and we'll talk about later in details on how these can be helpful. But majorly, you should be good with PowerPoint, Excel, some other data analytics tool like Tableau. You should understand how to conduct qualitative and quantitative research. Can you look through secondary research documents and find the synopsis of it, or build a synopsis out of it? Do you know how to conduct primary research through focus group discussions? Good things to understand or know, or skills to have. Then basics of financial modeling, profit loss, cost benefit, budgeting. How do we do budgeting overall? Again, a lot of UPSC aspirants would have some understanding here. What are the different kinds of funding? What's a loan versus a grant versus impact investing? How does a CSR fund differ from a philanthropic fund, and all of those? Then some elements of basic consulting frameworks. Like, if you want to understand how market is working, you should know the Porter's five forces, right? Then what's the theory of change for the particular organization that you're trying to work with, in terms of helping them build the strategy. Some understanding of social impact metrics, SDGs, what's ESG, and sort of stuff. Also good understanding of the policy landscape, the regulatory landscape, which will affect the project of the social impact organization we are concerned with. And some element of project management also, like understanding some certain tools like a Trello, MS Project, etc., which help day-to-day project management. Because as a consultant, you will be working with different stakeholders, including the partner, the team that will be working with you, the client. So project management skill is also definitely required. I'll just quickly look into the chat. Okay, no specific conversation, great. Moving on. Hard skills, very easy. I mean, not easy, but directly understanding. But when it comes to soft skills, often see a lot of students do not know exactly what they should, do. And henceforth, this is this is something I wanted to address very specifically. So when we talk about the key skills, if I to, bucket all the key skills into the soft skills that they would be, mapped into. So for example, if you understand that every, like, a complex structure can be broken into simple structures, like a complex molecule can be broken into simple atoms. Simply, in a similar way, if a complex problem is given, can you break it into its individual units and look into help find the root cause behind it? Can you think out of the box, not something which is already done and dusted? If there were things that are easy to do, a client would not have come to you, right? So what is something which is out of the box, outside in thinking, that you're providing? I spoke about root cause. Understanding was the strength and weakness. And then, of course, being practical with the solution. You can't sort of suggest things which are impractical to solve for, or can't be done right now. Extremely important is your communication. You don't have to use flowery ornamental English, for example. Very basic tool of communication is, it should be understandable. So how can you develop your thoughts in a very simple manner, but also not bore out the person, also not be too fast or impatient in addressing that to the receiver? So how can you precisely communicate in a short time but not leave anything out? And also the very important art of listening. So when you're sort of working with different stakeholders, as I said, listening to them gives you so much, leverage in solving the problem ultimately. Emotional intelligence, especially for social impact cases, being empathetic towards the the communities that the project is targeted to, understanding the sensitivities, around discrimination or, any cultural conflicts that might come in. Most of the situations will be high stakes. So how can sort of calm yourself and channelize positive energy in those high pressure situations? Then collaboration, networking. How can you work with different people and also ensure that it moves in the right direction? This positive, building of value from the collaboration, and they're fostering positive relationship with everyone in the team. That's important and goes without saying, right? You need to be passionate, you need to be committed. Again, I personally feel impact consulting is a tad bit more difficult than the regular consulting. And henceforth, being committed, being passionate, prior looking into the bigger impact over the direct profit is absolutely crucial and important. And that's something, that I definitely give a lot of credit for. So these are majorly, the type of soft skills that's important to crack at social impact consulting. Now I want to discuss what are the different steps involved in cracking such a consulting over the impact consulting firm. So it starts with number one, having a very crisp, value worthy resume, and in most cases, a cover letter to showcase why you are fit for the role, why you need it, what you're bringing to the table. A cover letter is basically an offline communication or a pitch you're making to the recruiter because you can't do it verbally in person. That's it. Once your resume gets shortlisted, you might or might not have a assessment round. So a case or a certain case study might be given for you to solve. Pardon me, I just have some water. So yeah, you would usually get a couple of days to solve a very simple case. They will try to test what you bring to the table in terms of problem solving. Then comes the round of interviews. So during interviews, if you have, for example, 4 rounds of interviews, maybe 3 rounds will be case solving. A social impact case will be given in each of these cases, and at least one of them will test a guesstimate. If it happens that maybe you have just 3 rounds, then expect a guesstimate come case interview in one of the rounds. But these are the two types of interviews that usually happen in these the type of process for the impact organizations. And finally, once they understand that you have the basic skills to be successful as an impact consultant, they also want to know if you'll be successful in the organization because of the nuance differences that I told you about, right? There's more to it. So they try to understand how well you'll fit in the culture, what you bring, why you're interested in the particular firm, etc. Again, some elements we'll talk about it. This is the entire step-by-step process. A lot of people know, but it's good to still have the clarity around it with respect to the hiring. Now, while a lot of people still know what to do, the issue is very less get selected, right? There's a lot of applications that these firms receive, so they are very, very stringent with the qualifications and the requirements for which they would even shortlist for a role. So, if we had to understand what are the major things to work on, not skills exactly, but things to work on to be, to increase your chances of converting this. Number one is your analytical rigor. That's very important. You bring it out through your work ex, through your college projects or whatever. But do you have an analytical bent of mind? You like to question, be critical around it. Then, of course, understanding. You need to have relevant, if not experience, good understanding of the sector. And the issue is it usually is not easy to come with just theoretical study. It has to come with some practical interaction. So how well do you understand the sector will be good to have. Then of course these firms want people who are achievers, so you need to be distinct. You should be in a crowd of resumes, your resume should stand out. You should be distinct with respect to what you're bringing. Your performance should be very strong. Your academics should be consistent overall. You should show exemplary leadership. And again, leadership doesn't mean success. Even if you, for example, worked on a startup which ultimately didn't work out and find a market fit, but you were able to convince a lot of people to listen to you and move ahead together. In your college, you may have worked with different sponsors to bring funding to a fest, or you organized a fest. Can be different things. So there are different elements of leadership, but have you showcased that in the institutions you have been part of? That's very important. They look also into your personality, your being, apart from your study and work. Who are you? So, what do you invest in terms of time? Do you develop yourself? What are your extracurriculars? They would want to know if you're an interesting person as well. Uh, if I to talk at a work level, how well can you handle complexity and uncertainty? There's a lot of uncertainty in the type of work we do. Anything could happen anytime. Different international orders coming in, projects closing. How can you handle the stressful, complex situations? And then first principle thinking. Um, Majorly, if I had to explain, first principle thinking is your logical brain telling you this is the next best thing to do. The next step that you should do is do this. That is what first principle thinking is. Like for me right now, the next logical thing for me is to move to the next slide, right? The obvious but the most practical thing. That is what they want. They want your common sense. They want to see how you can put your common sense, which has been developed through your reading, writing, experience with life overall into your work, into your projects, and how can I see that with respect to how you have solved very complex problems with simple solutions. That's all that they want to look for. So these are the things which you would definitely need to build. Now, coming to the intense parts of this session as well, where I'll need your focus. So let's talk about the first step. Yeah, we said that the first step would be needed, would be to build a very strong resume. And again, as I said, these firms receive so many applications. So the amount of time someone would spend on your resume might be absolutely very low, in seconds, often happens. So how can you bring your resume to a level where, you can ensure that even if a person spends just 10 seconds on it, at least one thing will click with them, which will make them understand that you are a good candidate to shortlist. How can we make that happen? So again, in the program, we discussed a lot of things, and there's a lot that I want to talk about, but I can't because of the paucity of time that I have right now. But of course, you'll if you engage with me, you'll get to know it more. But if I had to summarize a few points, here they go. Number one is your resume should be 1 page long. If today at this stage your resume is not at a 1 page level, the chances of it going through is very low. So please ensure that you make your resume only 1 page long. You need to choose and prioritize things which are there on a 1 page. If you can't put your resume in a 1 page, the first signal which goes through is that you can't prioritize at work also. And so this it's not a good signal to give, right? Second is RSC format. A lot of people may not know this, but in consulting specifically, the RSC format where you start with result, then you focus on what the action was that you're taken and what was the context because of which the action was taken. This should be in one line in a resume. Result first, always result first, then the action, then the context. Because when someone reads from left to right, you would want them, because of the less time that they are spending, that they focus, definitely read the result for sure. The result is basically what is the impact you created because of your work. What was the value you generated? Yeah. So that's an RAC format of a resume. Then you need to highlight what are the different academic achievements you have. And as I said, bring out that analytical rigor out of that. Uh, every project that you've participated, what are the relevant skills for the job? You're applying for a job, right? And they would have a set of skills. You need to, sort of map those skills through the work that you have done and henceforth bring that out very clearly. uh, Spoken about it already. They want to see people who are naturally can lead lead teams, or lead into solutions. So overall, how have you demonstrated leadership ability during different stages of your life? Can be in any form. And then whenever we write, we achieve something, we did something good. Don't leave it out at just just writing about the achievement. Try to quantify it as well. See if you can bring in some numbers. Like if you, for example, successfully organized a college fest, don't just end it there. Write how many people attended it. What were the number of attendees, and were you able to get more attendees than it was last year? That's where the element of value impact comes in. What are you doing more than what was expected out of you, or what could have been just business as usual? So that's the importance of quantifying your achievements, right? Then when I was talking about your personality, right? Apart from work, apart from your academics, what are the extracurriculars? And again, do you invest time in yourself? Do you like to read books and learn new things? Do you have an exploratory mind? Do you like to question? Are you curious? Always good to know. Do you give back to the society? Do you participate in volunteering exercises and stuff like that? When you write things down, try to bring ones which have the highest impact, highest value, the best result, maximum quantification in the top, and then make it in a descending order of impact. Why? As I said, people read from left to right, they also read from top to bottom. So when they're reading a section in a resume, now it will also be helpful if the one which has the highest impact is at the top. Next, very, very important, especially in consulting, your ability to work with people should stand out. Like it's not another regular job where your interaction with people can be minimal. You're not, for example, a software developer where you don't have to work with people as much as you have to spend time coding. Here, the value is driven by people. If your client tomorrow thinks that what you're doing is amazing and out of the world and it's creating value, that's when you get your success. And the opposite, you will be a failure no matter how much effort you've put in if the client doesn't think value in it. Yeah. So that's why people management is like I would say absolutely crucial and a very strong required skill in this domain that you need to build. Of course, you can't have it from day one, but you'll build on it. Another trick, when you look at, like, if you want to apply for XYZ company in the impact consulting, you would have a JD, right? The JD would have different keywords. See if the work that you have done, whatever is written on a resume, can those be reworded into those keywords. So that will increase the likability. The when a person reads, he or she will feel that okay, whatever I'm reading is very similar to what the job wants, and that means that the person understand what he or she needs to do, and the chances of the person converting is very high. So I should shortlist him or her. That is why we should have some relevance. And when I say keywords in your resume, try to highlight things that you want the person to know. So again, if someone wants to just spend 10 seconds to read a page, if things are bolded, underlined in italics, it just comes out easily because of the visual representation. You choose the words you want the person to read for sure. In a line of 10 words, if you want 3, 4 words for the person to read, definitely. Which are the 3, 4 words? You both. Those are your keywords. If you remove the keywords, the value of the line reduces significantly. That's a keyword. Yeah. If you're a fresher, for example, um, some of you may feel like, I don't have work experience, so how do I show so much? So you have your projects, you have internships, use those as a, I would say, a mini work experience section, and build out your skills on those particular opportunities. And then one thing which I hear a lot, I'm not from a tier 1 institute. My grades has not been great. I did not win any academic, medal in school or in college. What should I do? So of course, see that whatever has been done is done. You can't change your college now, right? We can't go in the past. But there are so many things more than grades, especially even if I just have to talk about academic section. So in your resume, when you have the academic section, there are so many things. Your grades, if you have participated in Olympiads, if you have any sort of medal that you've won, it could be getting the highest marks in a subject, it could be any recognition. National examinations like boards, etc., engineering, CA, whatever different examinations, all India ranks, international examinations like a GRE or GMAT. There are people who did not have the greatest undergrad, but then what they did is they prepared for GMAT and got a very good GMAT score and put it on the resume, showing that their academic skill is actually, top notch. So one thing which is negative is overcome by so many things which could be positive. Then some of you might have a knack for paper presentation research. So publishing them, presenting them, case comparations, all of those are super important. So that's something you should build on. Now, if I have to get into the case interview round, usually case interview rounds get to be 30-45 minutes, where the job of the interviewer is to find which skills they can test that would be needed as a consultant, and also test on you when you're solving the case. So for a consultant, we discuss the skills, right? The elementary skills, the key skills. So they will test those out. Like, people, how can you handle people? They will see how you're managing the different roadblocks that you're facing in the case solving. Then how can you handle stress? You have to present to the client. So how's your communication? They will see how you're communicating to the interviewer. Stuff like that, right? So in depth, whatever skills we talked about, all of those are tested over the 3-4 rounds of interviews that you will go through. Now, if I had to categorize specifically what are the top things that they want to look into, the ones that you can see on the screen are of value. So I've already spoken about first principle thinking, where they want to see how practical you are. 80-20 lens. I just want to take a pause here. Can anyone tell me if they know what is an 80-20 lens? Does anyone know what a 80-20 lens is? If you can just raise your hand, I'll be very, very surprised. Absolutely, Neeraj. You want to talk about it? Okay, I see Veena has raised your hand. You want to go ahead, Veena?
So 80-20 principle is the Pareto principle, where we believe that 80% of the impact comes from 20% of the work that we
Absolutely.
do.
Absolutely. Perfect. That's absolutely well put in. That's the Pareto principle. For folks who don't know, just do a Google search. It's good. But majorly, what it helps is your lens of prioritization. Can you identify what is that 20% thing which is leading to 80% impact? They want to see, will you get lost in the ocean or find the right boat to, hop onto? That is majorly what they want to see. The third thing is definitely your comfort with numbers. So not all of you will be from a mathematical background. So no one is asking you to do integration, differentiation. Basically, if numbers are thrown at you, will you get again, uncomfortable and make mistakes, or will you pause, calmly breathe, and then solve for it? And when you look at numbers, do you question, like if a company has three products and you see one product has 80% revenue, do you then understand what that means? Or you just look at numbers and numbers as numbers only? That's also something what they want to look at you. How can you look into data and see what it, what the data visualizes, what is the data trying to talk to you about? That's also something important. Logical reasoning, I don't have to explain all of, and effective communication, again, to repeat, being very crisp, not very complex, but easy to understand communication. The unique thing about consulting interviews is that the interviewer also wants to solve with you. The interviewer has information. You have to ask the questions to the interviewer and listen carefully to understand how you should solve it. That is how it's so different. So henceforth, being good with communication is very important for you to crack the interview as well, which of course, comes in handy when you become a consultant. But sorry. So yeah, speaking of which, I want to also lay down a few examples of a few impact consulting problems that usually I have faced with, or I know of, or you will find these as well. So just to give you a taste of what it means. So improving quality of education for school kids in a state, reducing the collections from the public distribution system. How can we improve farmers' income in the in a maybe a state where the farmer's income is disproportionate or the income inequality is very high? How can we improve livelihood for urban women where the literacy rate for women is very low? How can we transition the education system towards activity-based learning, maybe for up to a certain class of kids? And then climate impact of agriculture. How can we make sustainable farming a reality for India? All of these are very impact-driven projects. If you see, these are very different from an FMCG company wants to enter a market and make profits. How can we help them? So that's how these are different. Now, if you can see on the screen, there are a few frameworks, if I may call it, mini frameworks, which are very handy in consulting. Of course, given the paucity of time, I can't explain all of them, but these are things which are good, important to know for you to solve. Of course, you very happy you can explore these online, fine. But again, through the program that we have created, we'll be explaining all of these and understand where those fit in when you actually solve the real life cases. So how can we make something mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive? Imagine a Venn diagram and you'll understand then. How can we get to a root cause through an issue tree? What is a pyramid principle of communication? What is hypothesis? How do we do hypothesis testing? How can we make it messy using formula generation? What are the 4 Ps or Porter's 5 forces and all of those? Good things to know for you to be able to crack impact consulting cases. And while, as I said, impact consulting is a type of consulting, so most of the frameworks that at least you see in general business consulting are based on either profitability, where so profitability, by the way, just so you know, a lot of folks are not aware. So profitability is basically profits divided by revenue. Yeah. So it means that even if your profit is increasing, your profitability can go down. Why? Because the increase in revenue is much higher than the increase in profits, which means that the cost is also increasing. As a result, your increasing profit, the profit increase is not as high. So that is what profitability is. So company might be facing losses. It could be market led. It could be because of certain specific supply issue or a demand issue at your end. So we'll discuss all of these in details, but that's majorly a type of problem these companies face. Then we want to enter a new market. What is the product segmentation, targeting, and a differentiation that you should create for a go-to-market strategy? Then go-to-market is basically growing into another market. There are other growth frameworks, like you want to expand your product portfolio. You want to create a new product. You want to enter or penetrate the same market in a different customer segment. So there are different kinds of frameworks there. Merger acquisition, you want to enter a market, but you don't want to create your own factory. You want to merge with a player or acquire a smaller player so that you utilize this value chain already established. So how can you do that? When do you do that? Then for private equity, you are for example, a climate based private equity player. You want to invest in a certain climate tech company. For that, what is the investment amount? What is the period of investment? When should you exit? What is the valuation strategy used? All of that. Product pricing, you can price it basis customers' willingness to pay. It could be a commodity item where you just look into what margin you want to make and add it on the cost. It could be based on comparative benchmarks, different types, again, we'll discuss. And then increasing sales force efficiency. So financial, non-financial incentives, all of those come into play. These are the general frameworks again, which you can, go through and understand, utilize your time to see how you can solve them. Now, we talked about it, but let me, throw some light here. So when I specifically am talking about social impact consulting, you need to focus on, again, the socio-economical governance intertwined challenges like increasing healthcare, productivity or profitability improvement, instead of just basic framework based, the ones that I talked about, a bit different these are. Then how do you determine your key success factor? In this case, your literacy rates, uh, any sort of social impact indicators will be much, much more important, critical than your regular financial parameters. Yeah, I would request not to scribble on the screen, please. And then finally, how do you approach social impact problems? Like, there's so much gyan that I'm giving, telling you it's different, etc., but how do we do that? So basically, when you practice cases, you understand how you should not be dependent on the frameworks that I was talking about in the last page, but majorly build your organic approach on finding solution to a problem through your first principle hypothesis, and then structuring into different buckets through MECE way of structuring, using those to find structure. When you make structures on the paper for your solution, you make structures for in your communication as well, which ultimately is the right nerve with respect to assessing you for the interviews. So that's where it comes into play. Sorry. So we discussed about how they're different. Now, it's also important, which I have seen in my experience with a lot of people when they practice, that they do not take time to close or summarize the case. So how do we do that? What are the different steps we should take to ensure that the case ends on a very high note? And even if you have not gotten to the right answer, you should still leave a good impact and impression on the interviewer. So number one is, when we recommend, when we give the answer, never give the answer haphazardly as a laundry list. Always try to see how you can categorize it and put structure into it. Like, if you're looking into something which can be categorized on basis of timeline of implementation, maybe categorize into long term, short term, or is it high impact, low impact, high effort, low effort? For example, if there's a change management organization change in a company, it means the culture changes, the entire structure functions changes. That's a high level of effort. Then the second thing is, when we discuss specifically on the case, um, in during conversations, things will come up where the interviewer will tell you that, what, this will not work, or this may be a problem or a challenge. So using those hints, you need to take notes and ensure that you identify the risks. So during the process of, number one, building the strategy, and number two, implementing, what are the different risks, and maybe categorize them into high, medium, low, or again, impact based risk or non-impact risk. And then, very, very important to discuss that while I have also identified what these risks are, these are the solutions which I can map into them to ensure that I can mitigate them in the short and long run. And finally, in some cases, the interview will tell you, might stop you in between and tell you, can you just summarize the case for me? So with that, whatever stage you have solved for, always start with answer first. So that's what the pyramid principle is, by the way, we'll discuss it. But just start with the answer and then, build it out to show that, one answer was derived from two different hypotheses, and the two different were from five different others. And you explain that entire flow of communication you had during the interview, especially bringing out what would make it work with respect to what are the key success factors and what would affect or negatively affect the project, which would be the risks again. These are the three things I wanted to talk about, especially when you are talking about closing a case, when you have discussed it already. Yeah. So guesstimates goes without saying. There will be case interviews, frameworks, etc., that will follow, but guesstimates are comparatively also easy, also difficult, because you get very less help from the interviewer. It's majorly driven by you. So you need to find the number that the interviewer wants you to find. And majorly it's on elements of, top down or bottom up analysis, where you size a market, you take a few hypotheses, assumptions, and basis those assumptions, you try to reach a number. Each and every assumption that you take, even if it's a 10%, 20%, you should back it up with some sort of logic or reasoning. And that, again, we'll discuss that more in details in our sessions. But a few examples, how many ATMs are there in India? How many messages on an average are sent daily on WhatsApp? No one wants you to give the right answer. Though in a guesstimate solving, what people are more focused is on your approach. What is your line of thinking? How do you think in reality, if you were given 3 months, this approach would have solved, given you the right answer or not? That's something that they want to test out. We talked about, especially now with respect to the fit interview, the things that will be changed, tested. Some things that we already, mentioned before: your passion, motivation, how you're aligned So this is initially the fit interview is done after your case interview rounds or the guesstimates are done, and the HR, wants to understand you better. So why you're driven towards social impact, how well your priorities fit into into the company's priorities, how well do you work in a team, your interpersonal dynamics. Then the questions you should expect will be on your profile, what you have done, what value you have brought in, how much impactful did the organization, institution, your college, whatever thing you were, and some behavioral questions. And then, if I had to tell you the four things that you should always focus on in these interviews, number one, being again very simple and effective with your communication. Be concise. Don't bore people out for very long. The art of narration, storytelling. Develop interest in people's mind when you talk about something to, sort of instigate in a way. Show that you can drive, you can work hard as well as you're smart. And then overall, positive body language. That's very important. Like if you're someone who doesn't give the right vibe, as we say, it might get overall a bit difficult to fit in. Now, in the fit interview, something which you might have heard before as well is questions you should try to follow a star format. So this is what story or storytelling ability is. Star format is basically situation, action, and result. If a question is given to you, like, okay, I read about this project, can you tell me what you did here? You start with what the situation was, what was the context, why was it there, what was the background, then what was the task, what were you expected to do there because of your role designation. Then what did you actually do? So, how did you take the challenge? What did you, decide? How did you come up with the decision to take that action and stuff? And finally, what was the impact? What with this, what were you able to create? What was the change that you brought in? So, unlike if you remember in resume, I said that the result should come first, right? Because someone is reading from left to right. Whereas when we speak, the last thing that you talk about, if you leave it at a very high with the result, with the impact that you created, that fits, that stays better. So henceforth, we follow a star format in these fit interviews, right? Now, coming to pros and cons, very simple. A lot of you might know already, but important that I still lay out the right picture. So goes without saying, consulting is not easy. So there's a lot of growth opportunities. You challenge yourself every day with respect to problems you're solving. You learn new things. So unparalleled growth. You will learn so much about this particular function of consulting. People around you will be very smart. So overall, it's very intellectually stimulating. You actually get a chance to create impact on ground in hand with these organizations on a very regular basis. Pay is definitely very nice, very good. We'll talk about it. I know there were questions. The diversity of cohort that you work with is also high. People from different backgrounds come in. Right now, my team member is someone who has studied from INSEAD and Oxford. There's someone else. There's someone who's a CA. There's someone who's from a master's in public policy. I have been an engineer. So different people working together bring their different viewpoints, on the ground. That's what they look for. Very good career transition opportunities. Yeah, when I was in BCG and started looking, I got many good opportunities because of the type of work and consulting I was doing. Very also helpful because you'll be working with senior leadership, different client members on a regular basis. Your professional network becomes very valuable. It expands. People know you by your name, so it gets to be very handful when you want to step out and do something of your own. And goes without saying, if you have prepared for the UPSC civil services, your cross functional, cross cultural, cross industry knowledge is going to be of immense help when you solve problems, because again, as I said, you don't look into through one lens but multifunctional lenses. On the con side, yes, work-life balance is not that great, especially in India. Because of the culture, the work-life balance is not that great. Many occasions you have to travel, especially in social impact. You won't travel to the best cities, you will travel to rural areas. I might have to travel to Africa very soon, in rural Africa. So it's not the best with respect to travel. It gets a bit strenuous. Work can be stressful because if your client is causing you pain, it gets very difficult to control that. Yeah. The sort of research standard that someone in academics would be accustomed to is not at par, definitely, because again, the deliverable is also not at par. So because you spend less time on different projects and move from one project to another, you move from one sector to another, from one function to another, you becoming an expert in one single thing is very low. The chance is very low. So that's one con. If that's what your priority, then it may not work out the best for you. Now, again, why should UPSC aspirants like me, like you, or a lot of people, should try or go for it? You already know a lot about governance, public policy, socioeconomic issues. You have been trained to think through because of all the answer writing practice and the reading that we have done. We are trained to think, integrate different viewpoints together from different elements, and look into the bigger picture. So that comes naturally to us, gives us a huge advantage. Public service, definitely, that's, I'm guessing, stemmed the interest in UPSC, and it still stays. You will be able to do, you get a lot of gratification because of it, doing the same kind of work. Multidimensional thinking, I talked about your analytical critical ability, not only gets useful to use, but it's also stimulating for the same reasons. Your current affairs knowledge, understanding what's working around the world will be very relevant. Like, just, yeah, I can't disclose a lot, but for example, what happened in US made a huge change in the project that I was working on right now. You already are used to working hard, right? So consulting shouldn't be a difficult journey for you, especially for people who have been studying for long hours, putting in a lot of effort for the examination. You have a community, so you know how to engage with people. Your people management skills will be taken care of. You know how to delve deep into a subject, find the root cause, which a consultant does. You are resilient because you have endured the preparation mode, and then your competence across different cultures because you've read so much also comes into play. All of these, I think, are very very useful factors for you to be successful in this field. Yeah, salary. So there are, I categorized it into two firms. So if we want to enter if you want to join one of these at an entry level, the I would say the perks are definitely one of the best offered in India as well. Of course, we don't compare to the the software development packages, etc. But this is definitely a very good entry level package, and the growth is also not conservative at all. So if you grow in the organization, it just keeps on building up. And for the tier two organizations, which are a bit boutique in nature, might be a tad bit less, but there are a lot of people build their trajectory. They often start with a tier two, tier three, and then move to a tier one anyway and match in a few years. So that works well as well. So yeah, this is where I end. And Akshat, I would definitely ask you to take over, where you can let the audience today know, about the amazing work that has been put into build the Case for Change program and how it can be helpful. Given the small glimpse you understood what we talked about, this is what you'll learn a lot of more about in the program. But yeah, over to you, Akshat. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anamitra. That was indeed very insightful. And I'm hopeful all the people present on this call, on this webinar, might have learned a lot in terms of, what impact consulting is all about and what it takes to sort of, get into impact consulting. And like we discussed before, we did not want to keep it a secret. The formula is already out. People who, want to get into impact consulting, they know, now, hopefully, what it takes to get into impact consulting, and you can get started and get prepped or prepare along the lines which have already been discussed. But if you are looking for any professional help, support, guidance, we have this program which we have named as Case for Change, and we think it is India's first professional learning program, specially focused on impact consulting. And Anamitra has very kindly agreed to sort of be the lead instructor for this program. And like he has already spoken about, he brings in a ton of academic knowledge and practical experience in this field. So we are really happy, really fortunate to sort of collaborate with Anamitra for this program. If you can go on to the next slide, Anamitra, please. Yeah, so here are just this brief snippet of what this program is all about. Like I was saying, it's an end-to-end upskilling guidance and support program to help you get into impact consulting. Like I was saying, the recipe is already out. Whatever we talked about, we gave you a glimpse of. We are going to be going into details of each and every stuff in this particular program, which is around 5 to 6 weeks long, with sessions only on weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, 1.5 to 2 hours. And yeah, the program is kicking off on 1st of March. If you are interested, you can visit rebouncecareers.com and you can register for it. Registrations are closing tomorrow midnight. So if you are interested in impact consulting and if you're looking for professional help and support, I really encourage you to sort of register for this program. The fee structure is there on the website, Jomeen. So you can visit rebouncecareers.com and you can figure that out. But essentially, just to give you a bit more glimpse, we start from the very basics. We start from the requirements in an impact consulting role. Then we talk about focus will be on two aspects: case preparations, like how to crack case interviews and guesstimates, and all these structures and the frameworks which Anamitra sort of displayed on the slide. We'll go into details of every single structure, and we'll talk about examples and how those structures are sort of implemented in an impact consulting framework. Then we'll be having specific sessions on guesstimates, what are the frameworks to solve guesstimates, and of course, live cases and practice sessions around how guesstimates are to be solved. And finally, we'll also have a case competition to give you a very real life and practical feel of how sort of cases are solved. And we are hoping that in this 5 to 6 weeks, you would really up your game when it comes to acing the impact consulting interviews. And yes, there will also be focus upon other aspects of the process, which is about building your CV, fit interviews, and various things. Again, everything we gave you a glimpse about, and we'll be talking about in detail in a professional manner, of course, led by Anamitra as part of this program. So yeah, all of you who are interested, feel free to visit rebouncecareers.com and register for it. Registrations are closing tomorrow midnight. Along with this, we have another program. Anamitra, if you go onto the next screen, please. Next slide. Yeah, it's called Applied Public Policy Lab. It's a 3-month intensive upskilling program and a 3 month hand-holding guidance and support on anything and everything which is needed to help you out get into the market. Month one is exclusively focused upon case interviews, guesstimates, and rest of the other things which I talked about in the previous slide. Starting month two, it will be more about aspects of public policy, which Anamitra also talked about. For example, your theory for change, logical frameworks, building skills to analyze things in public policy, uh, building basic quantitative and qualitative analysis skills, doing literature reviews, literature synthesis, and of course, everything will be done via a live problem. So it's like from day one, you are working on a live problem statement, and at the end of it, you are implementing those problem statements, on that particular, problem statement which you work with, and at the end of it, you write a white paper which will be built across sessions. So it's not just about upskilling; it is also about strengthening your CV, building CV muscle, which is very important in any public policy role. So it's like if you're not a consultant, you're working on the other side of the table. If you want to sort of develop skills to get into and get working on the other side of the table, then you might as well choose to enroll for this particular program, which we call as Applied Public Policy Lab. It's a combination of CFC, which I talked about in the previous slide, and certain other things which are needed to become a well-rounded professional in the public policy space. Again, registrations are closing tomorrow midnight, and details are available on rebouncecarriers.com website.
These are the free resources. Everyone on call. Also, lucky for everyone who has stayed till now. These are the free resources which I have personally used in my consulting career to crack consulting offers. The first thing that you should start with is the YouTube video playlist of Victor Cheng on consulting cases. Then take any B school case consulting club casebook. Every consulting club builds that casebook. You'll have relevant interviews as well as industry primers and different frameworks at work. A few very good practice question banks are available in case in point case interview cracked. And then go to the websites of the firms that actually attract you where you want to work, and go through the website and look into their the line of work, and they will have some sample cases. These cases are explicitly mentioned for you to practice, so you understand what kind of cases are asked in interviews and maybe practice from them.